Every once in a while, every once in a great while, we can lose contact and connection with the spiritual forces, the esoteric powers that we work with in Magick. This video is about some of the explanations of how and why this can happen. First and foremost, it happens to everyone. No one that I know of is completely immune to this effect. However, there are times when it happens more, and there are times when it happens less. There are certainly times when it's much stronger of an influence, and then there are times when it's not so bad. Everybody goes through this. The best, the worst. Everybody goes through a period where magic loses meaning and spiritual beings go silent. We may even question our own practices sometimes. Someone like me, who is at least somewhat rooted in a kind of rational skepticism, even I have my moments, or especially I have my moments, where even I wonder. I don't doubt, but I don't believe in faith. I don't believe that faith is the answer. I think that having blind faith is the act of a religious ideologue, and it makes you susceptible to stupid con games and the kinds of tricks that charlatans would perform. No. I believe that magic and the spirit world are things that, despite any belief you must have or may not have, is a thing that should always be tested, is a thing that should always be questioned, a thing that should always be put to the test whenever possible. I don't mean that in a combative way, but certainly on occasion an adversarial way. Terence McKenna had, during one of his lectures, spoken about how only Thomas, not Peter, Thomas. Only Thomas was allowed to touch the crucified hands of Christ after he was reborn, after he was risen again. Only the doubter, Thomas the doubter, only he was given that special privilege of being given proof. So only the doubter seems to be the one who has the magic truly happen for them. And this leads me to my very first identification of why and how magic loses its meaning. Doubt or lack thereof. Either extreme can completely and utterly eradicate magic's power from your life. If you spend a lot of time in full dogmatic belief of magic, magic will fail you. Not simply because it won't manifest the things that you do ritual for. Instead, magic can become rather mundane, and magic can suddenly start to seem incapable because you will start to reach for goals which are more and more unreasonable. Now, some of you practice magic in a rather, we'll say, almost scientific way. You will practice different procedures and different techniques over and over again, modifying the elements bit by bit until you get the result that you're seeking. And for certain types of magic, I understand why, and I would say I do something similar. If you're doing rituals for success and wealth, well, by all means, you probably want to alter that ritual until you find one that works consistently. However, magic is not a machine. Despite what anyone thinks, magic is not a machine. And if it is a machine, it's a very unreliable machine. It's like a car with a bad starter or something, where on a cold day it might not turn over and you need to get a jump every now and then. And every time you have one of these failures, a little bit of doubt can creep into your mind. A little bit of doubt in your capability, a little bit of doubt in the reality of what magic is can creep into your mind. And so doubt, the spectrum of doubt and belief, is a very important one. Too much belief and too much doubt can equally cancel out your awareness, perception, and capability of magic. Doubt, of course, being an obvious one. Most people would readily say, well, if you doubt magic, of course it's not going to work. Well, I actually have news for you. A lot of people, including myself, have had success in magic, especially even more even more miraculous, because of a certain amount of doubt mixed with an open-minded attitude about being willing to give it a chance. You should always have a mindset that magic may or may not have the results that you're seeking. It should always be a test. It should always be a question. It should always be a quest for the energy of magic to fulfill. And when it does not, you should not be harsh on your own belief. You shouldn't suddenly believe, hey, magic must not ever be real. None of this is real because I didn't have a manifestation. No, that is improper. And by the same measure, you should also not have tremendous religious belief in magic because you've had success. Magic is simply one way of expressing the higher intention and creating the ability to manifest the reality that you wish. Magic, in a way, is an artificial concept because it is my belief that every moment of your reality is a form of magic. This means that when magic manifests in a way that is inexplainable, that is the magic that impresses. That is the magic that makes fantasy stories. That's the kind of magic that people raised on Harry Potter look for. However, the true magic is, well, the simple fact that you create the sun every morning when you look at it rising in the east. That is a kind of magic. People don't realize the truth in that statement, or why that truth matters. When you do, magic becomes easier. That doesn't mean, when I say easy, by the way, that doesn't mean that it will always manifest your desires. I mean, it's easier to figure out. It's easier to practice. It's easier to let go. It's easier not to worry about it being real or not. You simply do it as an exercise of expression, of art. It's a kind of performance art at that point, and anything that happens after is a cherry on top. If you're enjoying the process of magic, if you're enjoying the using books and reading them and seeking information and writing your own grimoires and then putting it into practice with ritual and performing rituals and invocations and feeling the invocation working, feeling things happening. That's the point. That should always be the point. And if that is the point, then doubt or belief will never really cloud your judgment. If the point of magic is because you enjoy the process, it will do better for you. Kind of like playing a video game. If you play a video game only to beat the game, it's not so much fun. It's more of an obsession. If there's no fulfillment, it's an empty process. It's an empty activity. If you hate the game you're playing but feel like you need to finish it, what's the point? So that is number one. Doubt and belief as a spectrum. Too much extremes can ruin you. So what is another one? Attachment is another one. By attachment, I mean typically attachment to a problem. Attachment to a problem can cause you to find it impossible to concentrate or let go, for that matter, on anything other than the problem. So for example, your girlfriend leaves you, your boyfriend leaves you, and you want to do a spell to curse them, or maybe to make them fall back in love with you, to make the person they cheated on you with have their toenails become ingrown and their anal glands infected and worms and maggots to grow in their stomach. Fair enough. Fair enough. When done with too much passion, well, let me correct that. Having passion in the ritual is recommended. Having too much passion after the ritual is completely and utterly toxic to the operation. Any form of magic should have a sense of release after it's done. It should be let go and given to the universe. There's a reason why Christians are right when they have a sort of a saying that says, leave it on the altar. Leave your prayers on the altar. The same thing is true for magicians. Leave your concern, leave your attachment on the altar. If you cannot do that, the outcome is not quite so guaranteed. In fact, you hold back at least your portion of any energy that was put into such a ritual. You may be something that requires the act of some other being. So having too much attachment to the situation, to the problem, will interfere greatly with things. And this can distract your mind from the reality of what magic is. This can allow creeping doubt to seep in. You can suddenly doubt magic because you're so upset about the thing that you want that when you don't get it, you blame magic and you stop using it. You stop practicing it. You stop performing it. What's the point? So attachment's another one of those things. Practicing too little would also be another one. Simply being lazy, basically, is what I'm getting at. If you have an altar and beautiful idols or sigils or whatever means at your disposal, and you never perform magic at all, even just a simple meditation with some candles and some incense, even just that, your connection to the sense of magic will diminish because it becomes less a part of your world. It's not something you think about, it's not something you deal with, it's not something you practice. Magic is better described as a kind of practice. Someone who practices magic, they don't need to do it every day, contrary to some of my beloved friends' ideas. They don't have to be practiced every day, but something magical should be in your mind every day. In my book, Become the Maelstrom, I point this out very clearly, that you should do something magical every day. Whether that is, I don't know, burn some incense and say a prayer to a spirit, or read a page or two out of a grimoire that you had, or watch a video on metaphysics, something magical, something to keep the fires lit at all times. However, doing deep ritual is not necessarily what's required. And so the other side of being lazy is doing it too much. Daily magical practice becomes a religion. Religion is not the objective of our practice. We're not trying to create or enter into a new religious practice. What we're trying to do is simply trying to experience the world in a magical way. That is really the goal. The only reason that you do magic is, well, you might think it's because you want something, that you want an outcome, but I'm promising you that the higher intention that you have is not simply to get what you want, although that may be part of it. The real intention is for you to experience something magical and miraculous and spiritual. That is the manifestation that is true. That is the manifestation you really seek. Otherwise, you would just work for the thing that you're looking for. Otherwise, you would just get a job for money. Otherwise, you would simply just start asking men and women out on dates and hoping someone says yes. The practice of magic, then, is the desire. It is the intention of the higher self to have a magical manifestation, a magical experience. And the way that manifests may not always be rational, it may not always be irrational. So long as the experience of magic happens, so be it. Practicing magic too much can also lead to burnout. Your spiritual senses can be burned out. You can begin to expect things too much. You can begin to expect sensations and paranormal activity. I can get to the point where, I have too much expectation for a spiritual manifestation, and that kills it every time. Spiritual manifestation, poltergeist activity, should always be a surprise and a shock. It should pretty much always make you jump, or at least make your spine tingle. That's when it's working best. That's when it's the most meaningful. Simply saying, okay, spirit, I need to have a sound, and that happens every time, well, sooner or later isn't enough. It's just going to be, okay, I got the bump sound. Oh, okay, maybe that's just, maybe my heater just clicked on. Is that why there was a click in the wall? Does it happen every night at about 3 a.m. when I do my rituals? How come? No, you can get burned out. You can get completely burned out. Your senses, your third eye, all of your sensory chakra can get burned out. You can become numb. Like doing anything too much, Doing anything too much can burn your senses out. Have too much spicy food, your tongue loses the taste of spicy food. Have too much sex, you begin to lose your passion for it, perhaps, becomes mundane. Your spiritual senses can burn out. And it can take time for them to rejuvenate. And sometimes, maybe never. You can become jaded to the point where magic is a mundane thought and it's no longer exciting. I go through this every now and then. I have to put it down every now and then and just play a video game or deal with something that I don't like. In a way, becoming a professional magician, a professional sorcerer and mystic, consulting sorcerer, by the way, link in the description to mindtheshadows.com if you want me to perform a ritual for you. Which I generally don't do, by the way. I prefer to consult. That's why I call myself a consulting sorcerer, but I do make exceptions. That's why I put it in there. becoming that has actually made certain magical practices feel a little bit on the mundane side. And so I'm still rather selective about doing magic for people because I don't want to get bored and I don't want to set myself up for failure. If someone's saying, Thorne, I'm dying of cancer, can you invoke Marbas for $300 and make the cancer go away? I'm going to say no. I absolutely cannot do that for you. That is not what it's going to do. But if you still want me to do a ritual for Marbas and make a petition, of course, I'm willing to do that. But you can do that yourself. Save your $300. Your family's going to need it. But if you burn out enough, you can actually lose faith in your abilities sometimes. Believe it or not, I know there's some people that are going to go, oh, Thorne, you're not valid. You're not a real magician if you think that. That sounds like the wording of a charlatan to me. Because if that charlatan was put to the test about what they're saying, we would find that they don't focus on magic 24 hours a day every day. And we would find that they're burned out and they're doing this for money. Bet on that. One of the other things, maybe the most important thing, because it's been on my mind lately, this entire year has been an exercise in this particular example. And that example is the mundane world grounding you out. You've probably heard me say this in live streams occasionally. What do I call being grounded out? Well, an effective sorcerer, mystic, magician is someone who is grounded in the earth. Their feet, their root chakra is in the earth, and their crown chakra, their soul is in the heavens. It's in the spirit world. And they are, in fact, not of one world or the other. They are the bridge between the two. They are the Baphomet. You are the Baphomet, ideally, in ritual. If you're performing magic properly, you are supposed to, intentionally or otherwise, essentially invoke the symbolism and the meaning of the Baphomet. You are meant to be the one and all and the all in one. You are meant to be that being. I don't mean necessarily in the demonolatry sense where you believe that that's a real being, because I believe that's a symbolic being. It can become, of course, egregorically real, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a spiritual being in the same way that perhaps you are. Maybe it is, though. Who am I to argue? My point, though, is that it is a symbol. It is like the yin-yang in Asian mysticism. It is meant to represent the totality. And you are that. You are the as above and you are the so below, and you are the conduit through which both extremes act. You are the actor and the acted upon. You are the dreamer and the dream. And so when someone is grounded out, or their head's in the clouds, that's another, we'll have to get to that in a moment. When you're grounded out, you are obsessed, attached, part of attachment to the mundane. Something in the real world is too taxing. Too much of your attention is focused on it. A good example would be during my busy season when I used to work at the family nursery last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. We would have the spring and the Christmas season. The spring season was about 3 or 4 months long. It was like the 180 days, or it was like the 90 days of hell. That's what we call it, the 90 days of hell. Because for 90 days, you're working pretty much 7 days a week, 10 hours plus a day. Easily from 8 in the morning till 6 at night, and it's nonstop hard labor. And when it's not nonstop hard labor, the breaks aren't really restful. It's a tough job. You're dirty, you're smelly, people are rude. It's raining, it's pouring, it's snowing, and you don't have much protection from it. And it's a grueling job. It's a tough job. What are the dirty jobs? Maybe it wouldn't quite make it onto Dirty Jobs back when that show was on, but probably pretty close. A lot of people think, oh, working in a tree and shrub nursery must be so pleasant. I guess on some days it is, but not if it's a busy nursery that's successful, with landscapers coming in and out and need to buy trees and bushes all day. No, it's a messy job. It's a tiring job. It's not like you just stand around watering plants and going, all day. So you're working 10 plus hours a day, 12 plus at Christmas time. You don't have time to practice anything. The best I could do would be, I might meditate over lunch, or I might read part of a book or something. But you're really grounded out because you're concerned about the mundane to such a great degree. Your mundane life is taking precedence of your attention. Another good example would be the whole year of 2020. For a lot of people, myself included, there's been a lot of mundane things that I've been focused on. A lot of political issues, as some of you may have noticed if you're following my political videos, which there haven't been many, but I've made a few rants about this subject. It's very much a big focus of my mind. Right now, I have spent more time in the last month on political, and when I say political, I don't mean left versus right, Trump versus this. I mean philosophical politics, looking at world events and seeing if I can predict the trends. And maybe that's a better way to describe what I do in that subject. I'm more of a trends predictor. I'm more of an oracle, if you will, for what's coming, what's not going to happen. And I'm pretty good at it, actually. Most people who've been following me when I'm talking about politics thus far will attest to well over 90-95%. I think E.A. Quetting said pretty much everything I said came true. I think he said it in the last live stream. So I'm pretty good at that. And part of that is spiritual. There's some divinatory process that happens. I'll use tarot. I will sometimes invoke a divinatory spirit. I will sometimes simply just do it and with visions understand. But it's also a lot of research. I have to do a lot of research and spend a lot of time studying current events and the analysis that other people have. And there's a lot of education that goes into that. And so this year, because of everything that's been happening, I've been descending more and more. My balance has been shifted more and more. On the Trinity of Self, my awareness has gone from being pretty well balanced in both spectrums, looking at the astral and the material pretty equally, to my gaze is almost entirely on the material and the mundane right now. There's a sense of hopelessness and loss attached to it because 2020 has been a very stressful year. I don't care where you land on the political spectrum. I don't care what you believe in. It's been a miserable year for everybody on some level. People are either terrified of COVID or they're terrified, for my video is probably going to get shadowed because of the, or whatever they call it, limited state because of this. But people are terrified of the illness and people are terrified of the measures that are being used to combat it. People are either terrified or angry or upset or worried or focused, and they can't focus on anything spiritual except out of fear. And fear, here's the mind killer, is one of the absolute worst emotions to have in magic. It is one of the weakest emotions. It's one of the most subservient emotions. It's one of those things that will take you from being above the throne to being below it, at the feet of whoever rides it. There comes my train. Pardon me, guys. Fear is one of the worst things for magic. And this year has been nonstop fear. So even if you don't believe in any of the things that I've said that I believe about what's going on, you have to admit that the fear that has been injected into our culture this year has probably knocked a lot of powerful magicians off their horse if they take these things seriously. That doesn't mean your studies stop. It doesn't mean you don't practice. It doesn't mean that you don't do what you do, but you may lose a connection to that magical feeling. You may completely lose a sense of connection to the spirit world. I've been suffering that, especially in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Since around just before the election until now included, my connection to the spirit world has been numb. And when I do ritual, I feel a numbness. I don't feel their presence. I know they're here. I'll see signs. My incense will wiggle. Strange things will happen. The spirits are here, yeah. And when those things happen, I don't say, well, that's a spirit. I mean, I might say it, but I don't feel it with the intensity that I'm used to. My ability to immerse into that belief, that experience, that gnosis has been allowed to smolder out. I've been grounded out, like when you ground out a cigarette. And I have to rekindle that flame when I'm finally able to detach my sense of attachment, going back to that attachment rule from earlier, to the things in the mundane that are distracting me. So being grounded out is a definite issue. Another example would be someone in your family is sick, or you're going to lose your home, or something like that, and you're really focused on the mundane. So again, that attachment thing I said earlier is very closely related to this, because it's usually a part of an attachment. So then the other one is astral. If your awareness, if you're so superstitious even, if you believe and focus all of your energy and time on the astral, You spend endless hours seeking visions and having them. You spend time dreaming and daydreaming and running tarot cards for everything. You don't even make decisions for yourself anymore. You're constantly doing divination. You become crazy, and you lose your connection to the material world. You can become quite literally insane by the standards of most people, and you are no longer a conduit through which the two elements combine to form you. You've now focused so much on the spiritual, astral, magical world that your ability to manifest into the material, objective world goes right out the window. And you won't have any problem being connected to the spiritual world. However, you'll really find out that that's more illusory than it is real. Because in the end of the day, you start imagining things that are spiritual because you need them to be. You end up being so focused heavily on the spirit world because you need it to be as like a security blanket or something, or a deep-rooted desire, or maybe you've just convinced yourself, maybe you've brainwashed yourself into thinking that the astral is the more real world. It's a very real risk for high-level magicians in particular. When I say high level, I don't mean the most learned occultist. I mean people who have quite literal, innate magical ability or developed magical ability. They can become superstitious, brain dead, astral projecting but not living morons. Especially when you see that they're the type who are almost always Pollyanna or superstitious about things. You know, when I say Pollyanna, they'll say, oh, well, the gods will protect me. The spirits are always looking out for me. Nothing can happen. And then a week later, they break their foot and they're all mad and they can't take it. And, I guess, they don't have this connection to like 2 + 2 anymore. They get let down a lot by the mundane world. The mundane world is firm and solid and hard, and it's very difficult to manipulate if you are nothing but air and light. You get what I'm saying? You need a firmness about you. You need to have the balance of the Baphomet within you for it to work properly and comfortably and safely. But right now, considering my attitudes, I could use a little bit of that. I could actually use a bump back in that direction. I recently did a ritual, and my friends know about it because we did a group ritual for something. And, I'm dedicated. You can't really see it too good, but I cut my arm about 11 times. I didn't scab up much because I didn't make the deepest cuts ever. I just wanted to draw a little bit of blood. So I made 11 cuts, and I made 11 offerings to 11 different spirits. Very powerful ones. And I can say that while I felt a connection, my ritual was terrible. And that leads me to probably the last one I'll bring up, is ritual performance. If you get lazy when you're doing ritual, I don't care whatever the reason, you will have a sense of disappointment and failure, even if the ritual works. When I say even if the ritual works, I mean, I'm one of those people that will tell you, even if you don't get a word from the spirit, if you do the ritual, if you do the invocation, you're speaking to the spirit, you're trying to get that communication, but you don't, you still speak your intent, you make your offering and you leave it on the altar and you walk away and you let it be what it is. And it will still potentially work for you. But if you're someone like me who's used to having very deep and strongly felt contact with the spirits and the magical forces at work, and you're really grounded out and you just go through the motions, those motions stop being fun, especially if you're a type of guy like me. I don't know if it's because I'm an Aries or what, but I get bored real easy when there isn't feedback, okay? As an empath, if I talk to a brick wall, it's boring as fuck. I like talking to real people that are energetic and that they don't have a filter where I can't get through. I really like responsive people. Same thing with magic. I like my magic to be passionate. I like to feel my magic. I like to feel the force, so to speak. I don't like to just imagine that it's there. I like to feel that fucker, right? And if I'm not feeling it, then that creates kind of a negative feedback loop because I'm not getting the feedback that I need. I'm not pushing the energy that I'm supposed to. And so it ends up being not much more than a prayer with blood all over it. And that is something that I don't recommend people practice. If you're like into demonolatry, and that's why you follow me, because part of what I practice is a form of demonolatry. I call it, infernal theurgy, or pagan theurgy, if you will. There's different versions of it that I practice. If you're that type of person, be careful that your magic doesn't just turn into prayers with blood and candles. or leaving meat on things or other offerings, you know, blood, wine, and candles, right? That's just going through the motions and making your offerings and stuff. It's not magic. You're not supposed to be into a religion. At least not what I preach, anyway. Not what I teach, not what I suggest. If you really want to make your demonolatry a form of religion where you literally worship and pray to these beings and you treat them as spiritual family that look out for you and they've got you, you know, like you've made not just pacts with them, but they're like your gods, hey, I'm not judging that. I just don't recommend it. It's just not what I recommend your path be. You should see yourself as that God. You should go to yourself for those things. And then I guess that leads me to the really true final version of losing your connection to magic, and that is when the spirits want you to do something on your own. That is when the spirit world is not taking your calls. And this can be because you've offended some spirit, or you've offended yourself, really is what that really kind of means in a lopsided kind of way. Even though I am one of those occultists and magicians that will tell you, I believe spirits are external, but they're also mostly, your experience of them is almost entirely internal. Okay, when you're invoking a demonic spirit, you're kind of invoking a part of your psyche, but your psyche is influenced by something that is a real spiritual entity. That's kind of hard to rationalize, so maybe I'll make more videos about that on someday soon. But there are, when I say external, I mean external to your experience as an individualized being. And there are spiritual beings that can be congressed with, if you will, but your experience of them is almost always going to be through the lens of your personal identity. So when you invoke a spiritual being like a demon, you will have external manifestation, but you'll also have internal truth, subjective truth. That subjective part is actually a filter through you. It's going to be filtered through your mind, your experience, your personality, your psychology. And the external part is something else. So when the spirit world isn't interested in speaking to you, it could be because you've insulted it. And again, like I said earlier, that could mean you've insulted a part of yourself. And that part of yourself wants nothing to do with you for a while because it's pissed at you. Your shadow, basically. Or the spirit world is literally, for whatever reason, not interested in helping you right now. Maybe your desires are greedy. Maybe you're being disingenuous with them. Maybe what you're asking for is literally impossible. Maybe they've decided that you need to fly on your own for a while. Maybe they decided that you're not supposed to do magic every day. Maybe they decided that you've got to go and get a job. You know, that you need to be mundane for a while. So that's a definite possibility. So how do you deal with these things? Well, what I told you should, if you're an intelligent person, give you indications on how to not have those problems. But I would tell you that despite knowing those problems, you will still have them. They will still happen. I'm going through it right now. I'm not afraid to tell you that. Doesn't mean my magic is off. It doesn't mean that it's not working. It just means that my connection, like a Jedi, my connection to the Force has been severed for a little while. That's normal. It happens to everybody. And if people look at me and say, oh, he's not that great a magician because he says that. Well, I must be pretty damn proud and powerful if I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. Because that is the truth. 100%, 200%, 300% the truth. Everybody goes through it. Everybody. I've never met a single magical person that doesn't lose conscious connection with magic. And I want to put that qualifier in there because some people might beat me over the head and say, Thorne, you said every moment is magic, and that is true, but I mean your connection, your conscious awareness and ability to interact with that force of nature can be severed temporarily. It never goes away, but you can cut it off because of your own needs, awareness, or sometimes the outside doesn't want you to see it anymore. It wants you to learn, or you've pissed it off. So anyway, guys, if you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share responsibly. Don't just share it with anybody. Look inside the description of the video. You're going to see links to all of my products and books and things. I'm pretty much a career content creator and professional consulting sorcerer. So that's how I make my living. And it's a humble living, I'm going to be honest with you. So every little bit helps, especially during COVID season and all this other crap. But I'm not trying to beg. I'm just trying to encourage you. If you want to support me, that's the best way. Go down in the description and look for my books, look for the products that I offer, and that's a way to do it. I just opened an Etsy store recently, and we just sold out again of my wife's mirrors. That goes to her, and that's pretty much her money. So it does help me, though, because it helps pay for the house bills, I'm not going to lie. But the Etsy store is up, and I have books which you can purchase, which I will sign and dedicate to you. Make sure that if you go to the link for our Etsy store down below, it's the one that's Mind the Shadows specifically. If you go to that one and you go to purchase one of my books there, they're a little bit more expensive, but I will sign them and personalize them to you. Just make sure you send us a message on what you want it to say, or myself and my wife will contact you and ask you for that if you forget. So make sure you do that in there. But if you don't, that's also fine. No pressure. So anyway, guys, that's it for today. Until next time, mind the shadows.